What's going on, Paizonos? It's me, Tony Pizza, here with your somewhat weekly delivery of piping hot Starfinder content, where we combine the ingredients of game mechanics into a beautiful narrative pie, giving you new ways to think about and cook up fresh stories for your group. This is the second in a three-part series about Galaxy Guide, which is the first publication released for Starfinder 2nd Edition. This setting book is out a few months before the full launch of the system, and it's got some heavy-hitting, non-core gameplay content that we're going to review today. In this video, we'll be looking over the 65 backgrounds included in Chapter 3 of Galaxy Guide, and we'll be determining the synergy level of each one. While backgrounds are the least significant of the ABCs of character building, your character's background can provide a ripple effect throughout the rest of your build that informs your skill and feat choices, which will impact you in every session you play. Selecting a background that synergizes with itself and that maximizes the ability boosts that it provides will give you a leg up on the in-game activities that you'd like to succeed at. However, this system is versatile. The free attribute boost that comes with each background means that any of them can work well with anything. And the policy baked into the rules about overlapping skill acquisitions instead granting new skill training means you're never wasting a choice. The information in this video is simply a guideline to help you choose which backgrounds effectively take the least homework to make work. First, some disclaimers. While many of the feats and skills are drawing from the existing Pathfinder 2e rules canon, some of the material is working off of the Starfinder playtest. Some of the information presented herein may become outdated once the system fully launches, though I have tried to address this possibility where it comes up. These backgrounds are the first official non-playtest backgrounds released for Starfinder 2e. But for you purists out there, just a reminder that Galaxy Guide is a setting supplement and not the core rulebook. The core backgrounds will be coming in Player Core with the full launch of the system. Despite that, there are many common choices here that will undoubtedly see major use. Please also note that there are many uncommon and even rare options here as well. Uncommon is code phrase for ask your GM, but in more cosmopolitan areas of the galaxy, these will likely be allowed. Rare, in contrast, is unlikely to be allowed, unless it specifically fits the theme of your campaign. Even then, always a good idea to ask your GM. I realize that it may be a bit unclear as to what I'm referring to when I say whether backgrounds are synergized or not. To that end, I'd like to show you the 34 backgrounds out of the 65 in this book that I consider synergized, and I'll explain why they are arguably easier to build around and play with than the others. Each background contains a predetermined attribute boost that could be one of two choices: one free attribute boost, one skill training, one lore training, and one skill feat. There are variances from this formula, especially among uncommon and rare backgrounds, but typically this is the pattern followed. We will be examining how best the predetermined attribute boosts, one of which you must take, synergize with the given skill and feat training. As lore is dependent on intelligence to be truly good, we will only consider the quality of the given lore on builds where we're likely taking intelligence. We're going to divide these up by which attribute you're almost certainly going to take with them, starting with our martial attributes of strength and dexterity. Strength has the fewest synergized backgrounds in this book, at a whopping 3, which is mostly due to the fact that Strength only has one dependent skill training, athletics, which each of these backgrounds provides. Crystal Prospector gives the hefty hauler feat, which in loot-heavy games is virtually a must-have until you can snag a spacious pouch, or whatever the Starfinder equivalent will end up being. Salvager gives you Combat Climber, which is rather niche, but critical in the right context. Space Trooper gives you Quick Jump, another contextual athletics feat. These are synergized because they all give you athletics training, as well as feats that rely upon strength, in addition to an option to choose strength as one of the two predetermined attribute boosts. It's all about how well that forced choice between two options blends with the other mandatory things that you get. Dexterity has a few more skill options, and thus has more synergized backgrounds. About 6.5 of them, to be exact. Defector and Stowaway are your stealth options, which give you Terrain Stalker and Experienced Smuggler, respectively. Note that the feat option for Stowaway kind of assumes that you're also trained in Thievery, but I'd still call that synergized, since you'll be taking Dex anyways. Speaking of Thievery, Pickpocket is a solid background that provides it, and pairs it with the titular Pickpocket feat. Terrific if your GM actually remembers to give the proper penalty to theft to those who don't have the feat. Pickpocket also offers Intelligence as an attribute option, as well as the powerful Underworld lore, so this background would be great for a recall-based, ranged or finesse martial. Sky Rigger gives acrobatics for actions like tumble through, balance, escape, etc., as well as the Catfall feat, which is versatile and strong. Space Trucker and Taxi Driver are your piloting options, both giving the Express Driver feat, which in the playtest allows you to move faster in exploration. Meh. Starship Dweller is uncommon, and is the one that I'm considering half a Dex option. It offers a Dexterity or Constitution attribute boost, and your choice of either crafting or piloting as a skill training. If you go with a Dex build, then piloting seems the natural choice, or you could go with a Recall Soldier with Con and Int, and pick up crafting. The latter option is actually especially enticing in a more spacefaring game, since you get a terrific lore option of, quote, relevant to the ship you lived on, unquote, which is pretty open-ended. In lieu of a feat, you instead are never clumsy or off guard while untethered, which is pretty cool if you'll be in open space. Let's move on to the Intelligence synergized backgrounds, of which there are 11, the most of any single attribute. Since these backgrounds work best with Intelligence, you're likely actually going to be using the lore that each one gives somewhat often, making them an important factor in judging the quality of this batch. Several of these backgrounds provide computers training, including a few unsynergized ones we'll see later, which makes sense as it's a brand new skill to those only familiar with Pathfinder 2e. That being said, I'm actually a little surprised there weren't more piloting options for Dex for the same reason. You'll get computers from Hacktivist, Fisher, and Tech Delver. Hacktivist gives the Freaker feat, which is a modest credit saving that scales to a +1 item bonus at level 3. Fisher gives Fishing Expertise, which swaps the Create a Forgery activity from Society to Computers. Good if you have a build that depends on other skills that you can't waste on Society, but this one won't come up too often. Tech Delver gives you additional lore, which is always solid. Speaking of lore, each of these backgrounds' lore options are just good, not great. If you instead want to build around Society, you're going to want to go with Fixer, Tourist, or Xenoseeker. Fixer gives Streetwise, which is a terrific option for a low charisma build to sub out Diplomacy for Society, as well as the always outstanding Underworld lore. Tourist gives Crowd Surfing, a playtest feat which makes it easier to move through crowds, extremely niche. Xenoseeker gives a classic intelligence feat in multilingual and life science lore, which will apply to most every animal. 2 intelligence backgrounds give you crafting, the Cloud Chemist and the Technophile. Cloud Chemist comes bundled with the Serum Crafting feat, which hasn't been published yet, but is likely the equivalent of magical crafting or alchemical crafting from Pathfinder 2e, in the sense that it probably allows you to craft a bunch of powerful items for your party. Technophile, on the other hand, grants quick repair. Situational, yet crucial, in games where PCs have deteriorating items that need regular crafting upkeep. 2 intelligence backgrounds supply you with Arcana, the aptly named Magic Officer, and Rune Touched. Magic Officer saves you a cantrip slot of Detect Magic with the Arcane Sense feat, and Warfare Lore is a really nice touch in most every campaign. Rune Touched, hilariously enough, is actually pretty much the same yet slightly worse than Magic Officer, despite being a rare background, also giving Arcane Sense, yet with the more niche Lissala lore instead. 1 final intelligence background gives you Occultism, the Akashic Recorder. This background is also uncommon, and for good reason. You're allowed to select any lore skill you want to go with it. That, plus the Assurance feat in either the selected lore skill or Occultism, makes this a potent background good for many kinds of stories. We'll wrap up the Synergized backgrounds by exploring 13 Wisdom and Charisma ones. We're bundling these together because, well, most of them are actually Charisma. Only 4 are Wisdom-based. The Wisdom backgrounds are split into 2 with Survival and 2 with Religion. Courier and Shipwrecked are both survival options, granting Urban Survivalist and Survey Wildlife, respectively. The former is a playtest feat that lets you forego the usual society check to subsist in cities in favor of the more traditional survival check. And Survey Wildlife grants essentially a pre-combat recall if your GM is nice enough to set that up for you. The religion options are Masked and Pilgrim. Pilgrim really doubles, even triples down on the religious aspects of this background, giving you a lore skill for your religion, as well as the Student of the Canon feat, making your religious recalls even better. Masked, by contrast, seems more suited for evil games. Take that uncommon tag seriously here. You gain Devil Lore and the Holy Talisman skill feat, the latter of which revolving around an initiative bonus for quickly creating a religious symbol. And since the background heavily suggests that you follow or worship devils, you'll likely only be going this route if you're a bad guy. It's Risen time, folks! There are 9 backgrounds in this book that are synergized for Charisma, and that give you lots of useful skills to boot. There's only one option for Intimidation: the Bouncer. Now here's a guy who many support marshals are gonna take, due to the tremendous Intimidating Glare feat. I guess there's a lot of nightclubs in Starfinder. 2 backgrounds give Performance, which is in competition for one of the most useless skills in the game, though it does have its niche. The Busker gives you Impressive Performance, and the Dreamer Disciple gives you Virtuosic Performer. I'm not quite sure what, outside of its lore choice, makes the Dreamer Disciple rare, as Virtuosic Performer is an extremely situational common feat, even though it does grant a solid bonus. Moving on to Deception, there are 3 backgrounds that give this skill: the Fashionista, the Gambler, and the Rebel. Fashionista grants the Favored Disguise feat, a playtest option that removes critical failures from impersonate checks. Gambler and Rebel both give you Lie to Me, a good feat for high charisma and low wisdom builds, which lets you detect lies with deception instead of perception. The final 3 synergized options are for Diplomacy, Escort, Scale-Touched, and Street Vendor. Now, we're gonna be mature here, and we're not gonna chuckle about how the Escort provides the Hobnobber feat. All chuckling aside, this one is niche early on, but really comes online once you hit Mastery, where it eliminates critical failures on some Diplo rolls. Scale-Touched grants a feat called Don't Panic, which, as far as I can tell, hasn't been published yet, but sounds like it's a charisma-based team buff. Street Vendor grants Bargain Hunter, which is a good way to get extra starting creds, as well as some pretty hefty money savings in any long-term game with downtime. Of the 65 backgrounds included in Galaxy Guide, 20 of them are what I'd call specific, as opposed to synergized. Their skill training and feat do not synergize with their predetermined attribute boosts, and on occasion, don't even fully synergize with each other. Before we go through these, just a reminder that this label doesn't mean that these backgrounds are bad or unplayable, just that taking them will suggest either a pretty specific attribute choice for your free boost, or will mean that you're ignoring certain features of the background if you get a little too wild and wacky with your boosts. Just to make this easy, we're going to split these up by the attribute that you're likely to take as your free boost, starting with Dex, which only has one option. We love the meme culture of Starfinder here at Tony Pizza, and a classic horror film one is present in the Final Survivor background, which gives Constitution or Intelligence, but also Stealth. The Terrain Stalker feat is interesting in that it doesn't technically require a stealth roll or dexterity, but if you've got stealth training already, it's definitely something to consider. There are no strength options in the specific category, so let's move on to 4 choices that suggest you take Wisdom as your free boost. 2 of these 4 provide survival skill training. Creshborn and Recruit both give you the Terrain Expertise feat. Creshborn gives Dexterity or Constitution, while Recruit gives Strength or Constitution. While Terrain Expertise is best in an outdoors game, adding Wisdom to Strength, Dex, or Con is a great base for any support marshal. Sacrifice is also Strength or Constitution, this time with a religion angle instead of survival. Another horror movie meme, this background will be very popular with players for giving the Die Hard feat. Finally, the Xenobiologist gives Constitution or Intelligence, but also Nature, and the Survey Wildlife feat. This would be best for an Int and Wiz caster, or a Con and Wiz support soldier. Let's talk Riz, with 6 choices. We begin with a Fizzle and a Whimper, with some uncommon and rare options that just don't have the juice. Arena Veteran gives Strength or Dexterity, but you'll want a Charisma Marshal to complement performance and the Fascinating Performance feat. Code Carrier gives Constitution or Intelligence, then swaps out Lore in favor of giving you 2 skills, Computers and Deception. You could build Int and Ka for the Deception, ignoring Con, but then you're immediately spurned for this decision with the Digital Diversion feat. This one may change in the final version, but in the playtest, it just allows you to sub out a Deception check for a Computers one. Why would you do this to us after we just chose the background that gives both Deception and Computers? That, plus no lore on an Int background, had me facepalming a bit on this one. Dagox Convict is a rare background, and while it is quite interesting, it ain't worth that blue trait tag in my view. It gives Strength or Constitution, then gets extremely multiple ability dependent or mad when it asks for Charisma for Deception, and gives Lengthy Diversion, which is a feat that kind of assumes you'll be incorporating Sneak and thus Dex into your arsenal as well. Gun for Hire gives Strength or Dexterity, and is pretty solidly locked into a Charisma Marshal with Intimidation training and Quick Coercion. Quantum Clone is a far more versatile rare option, giving Constitution or Intelligence, then tossing you Deception, but also any lore skill of your choice. The skill training feat tacks on an additional skill, again any one of your choice, meaning that you could go Con and Ka, dump the lore, and get a second Charisma skill, or go Int and Ka with Feint and Lie capabilities, a powerful lore of anything you want, and any other skill that you'd like. Terrific, terrific versatility, despite the rather pigeonholed attribute boost options. This one is deserving of its rare status. Let's label this rare for a reason. Tech Troll gives dexterity or intelligence, but you're likely going to want the dex for stealth, as it also gives deception and the aforementioned lengthy diversion feat. This background is similar to the Dagox Convict, but since you've got the dex available to you from your mandatory boost, this one actually is a bit more synergized, despite only being common rarity. Some good and some bad options there, but luckily, the 9 intelligence choices are mostly home runs. Antediluvian Seeker gives Constitution or Wisdom and requires intelligence for crafting and the specialty crafting feat. Your choice of either gap lore or another lore related to your field of study is quite versatile and could likely be applied to any kind of monster or life form. Bartender gives Wisdom or Charisma. Wiz or Riz, baby! I have to stop saying Riz. But Diplomacy training plus the Seasoned feat, which uses crafting, means that this background is best suited for Ka and Int, ignoring the Wisdom option. Ghosted is a nifty rare background that gives either Constitution or Wisdom, as well as Arcane training and Occult training, in addition to the usual lore. Arcane Sense saves you a cantrip slot by giving you Detect Magic, so while you're gonna want Intelligence, this could be perfect for a Con and Int Recall Soldier or a Wiz and Int caster of any variety. Piggybacking off of Ghosted, we now have Haunted, another specific background which gives Wiz or Riz. Damn it! Like Bartender. You'll get the Occultism skill and Recognized spell. This feat, while pretty solid yet situational, also suggests that you pair Intelligence with Wisdom to get the best mileage out of it. Not much use for the Riz option if you're haunted. I am haunted by the Riz. If I had a nickel for every time this book included a clone-themed rare background,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Joro Clone is fascinatingly weird, hence the rare tag, as you're essentially a clone of one mysterious NPC, of which there are many, many clones gallivanting about. This gives Constitution or Wisdom, as well as crafting, and an extremely situational lore skill paired with Assurance for either crafting or lore. Junker gives Strength or Dexterity, but crafting training and quick repair make this best for an Int Marshal or Mechanic. The lore and feat are both going to be best in games revolving around technology and machines. Lost Octernite gives Constitution or Charisma, which pairs with Occultism and Oddity Identification. Similar to other builds we've mentioned, you could go with a Con and Int Recall Soldier, or Int and Ka Envoy or Blaster Caster. Street Psychic gives Wiz or Riz, and is another kind of mix and match caster option with Occultism and Oddity Identification, suggesting Intelligence. Unfortunately, fortune-telling lore is just not very good. Unleashed is a rare background that gives Strength or Wisdom, as well as Arcana, Occultism, and any lore of your choice. Kind of a combo of what Ghosted and Quantum Clone give. With Recognized Spell also in play, you could make the most use out of that by going Int and Wiz, or you could build a Strength and Int Recall Marshal, but be unable to discern Primal or Divine spells. Those of you who are high-int mathematics nerds may have been counting along with me the entire time.
But Tony, you said there are 65 backgrounds in this book. How How could that be if there are 34 synergized ones and 20 specific ones? That's only 54.
Very perceptive. Yes, there are 11 more backgrounds in this book, which we'll cover now, that I am putting into a category that I'm calling Synergized Plus. These special backgrounds aren't just synergized with one attribute. Instead, their builds suggest and are enhanced by exact pairings of attributes. This concept might sound similar to the specific category, but remember, specific backgrounds are so named because they suggest that you take one specific free boost that the background doesn't give you automatically. Synergized Plus backgrounds, instead, are still quite mad, but they provide you with the needed attributes to fulfill this. As expected, these are quite powerful. Let's look at what we've got. Of these 11, virtually all of them are various combinations of intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, the three mental attributes. Precisely one of them is not, and that would be the rare Shrouded background, which would be best served with a pairing of Constitution and Wisdom. This outstanding background would be great for a support soldier as it grants medicine training as well as the Toughness feat, one of the outright best feats in the game. Shrouded is a good example of how these Synergized Plus backgrounds like specific pairings, but the only one that is still pretty flexible is the Magic Scholar. For this background, you get to choose which of the magic skills you'd like to be trained in: Arcana, Occultism, Nature, or Religion. This, plus the situational quick identification feat, means that you have the versatility to go with either Intelligence or Wisdom and make your free boost whatever you want it to be. The delightfully fun Scam Mage asks for a combination of Wisdom and Charisma, the ultimate Wiz and Riz background. There's no lore skill here. Instead, this one grants you Deception and any magic skill of your choice, just like the Magic Scholar. The Trick Magic Item feat puts a bit of a snag into this build. If you're building Wiz and Riz, you're likely already leaning Spellcaster, which would make this feat a bit redundant. However, for purely support martial builds, this one could be a blast. Two backgrounds suggest that you instead blend Brains with Aura with Intelligence and Charisma, Chatty, and Hitchhiker. Chatty is a background? Chatty is just a singular personality trait. These dang extroverts. They're taking over. Both of these backgrounds give Society, which is int-based, then give you the terrific playtest feat Digital Ambassador, which lowers certain penalties for some charisma actions when you don't share a language with the target. This doesn't impact in-combat abilities until you have Society Mastery, but this is still a great feat. If you're instead looking for a combo of Intelligence and Wisdom, you have three options at your disposal: Anomaly Hunter, Tech Jaded, or Tech Priest. Anomaly Hunter is a background that definitely deserves its uncommon tag and is great for skill monkey PCs who want to be good at everything. You get a monster 4 skill trainings from this background alone, and more than that, you get to choose them from a pool of 8. There is one dex option in here, but I would recommend avoiding it because it would make you a bit mad, and instead getting a wide swath of recall options, especially since you get the oddity identification feat too. Tech Jaded and Tech Priest both grant computers training, meaning they're each another easy method to attain one of Starfinder 2E's brand new skills. Tech Jaded also gives Hologram Skeptic, essentially a sci-fi version of the Illusion Sense feat, requiring good perception. Tech Priest grants you religion training instead of a lore option, as well as a nifty free and versatile spell once per day.
But Tony, what if we want a background that's so versatile that any combination of the 3 mental attributes could work with it?
Alright, kids, here's your ice cream. The Ancient Elibrian, a rare Eoxian background. It's another choose-your-own magic skill background, but you also get a once-per-day second rank spell of that tradition. At level 1! I don't know of another method by which you can upcast to second rank at first level. Maybe there is one, but either way, it's gotta be a pretty rare find in-game. Since you get an innate spell, you're going to want Charisma if you want the DC to be good. If you instead go with a support spell, you could go Int and Whiz for full recall. Otherwise, just pick the one that applies to the tradition you're going for.
But, Tony...
What? What do you want now? You want something even more versatile? You want backgrounds that threaten to break the sacred balance of the system? Well, do I have just the things for you. The final 2 backgrounds in this book. Hustler is a common background that gives Constitution or Charisma and allows you to choose any skill training you'd like. Super easy here to just go Con plus any other boost with any skill, and while the feat isn't remarkable, it is pretty solid in a long-term campaign with downtime. The very best background in this book, however, in my opinion at least, and rare for a really good reason, would be the Escaped Experiment. Look at this. Just look at this beautiful background. 3 attribute boosts, each of them free, and the GM gets to pick one of them. No skill training is included, so this is best if you're happy with what you've already got from your class, but they throw in Canny Acumen as a feat to boost your weakest defense. Whatever character is created out of this background is going to be markedly more powerful than most, especially if they choose Intelligence as a boost to make up for the slight skill deficiency. My voice. I think I'm losing my voice. I can't believe that I smushed 65 backgrounds into one video. And I further can't believe that you're still around watching me yap about it. I did notice a trend here with these backgrounds, which could be Galaxy Guide specific, but likely is going to stay true through the development of Starfinder 2e. Since many of the skill and feat options are tied to Charisma and Intelligence, there will naturally be just more options that vibe with these 2 attributes. If you're making a character that relies upon Charisma or Intelligence, you will have way more background options that'll work for you. But, as mentioned at the top of this video, your background is the least significant of the ABCs. I do think that the choice of background can often be unfairly swept under the rug, but with enough research, you'll find that there's a background out there for most every character you'd like to make. Hopefully, this video has given you a primer on what to look for when you're reading about future backgrounds in this system. And again, this is all just one guy's opinion, so if you think, I don't know, Escaped Experiment completely blows, sorry, you're wrong. Just kidding. There are so many ways to bake a pie in this system, let me tell you. I'm just sharing with you a little of what I like, and it's gonna be different than what you like, and that's okay. If you did like what I had to say though, there's one more video on Galaxy Guide baking in the oven for you. Part 3 will wrap with a delve into the 6 powerful archetypes printed within, and if you missed Part 1 somehow, that one covers the 6 new ancestries included in this book. Happy munchin' and crunchin', Starfinder fans, and stay right here for more TTRPG goodness from Tony Pizza's Kitchen.